building behind me there is Westminster Abbey, and this has been the centre for religion and ceremony for the royal family for nearly 1,000 years. But it's not the splendid architecture that I want to talk about today, nor the 17 kings and queens that are buried within the abbey. It's a man who's buried in Poets' Corner, which is usually reserved as the final resting place for the great writers of the nation, such as Geoffrey Chaucer, Charles Dickens, and the playwright Ben Jonson, who was buried standing up. The gentleman in question is Thomas Parr, also known as Old Tom Parr, or in the place of his birth, which was Winnington in Shropshire, he's known as Old, Very Old Tom Parr. And his memorial plaque in Poets' Corner in the Abbey quite clearly says, born 1483, then it lists the 10 kings and queens whose reign Tom said he lived through. And then it says, died 1635, aged 152. Old Tom was living in an old cottage that had been in his family for generations, and he was living off charity. The villagers would bring him some old stale bread, green mouldy cheese, but on special occasions, a glass of cider. The Earl of Arundel heard about this very old man and decided that he would present Old Tom to the king as a curious piece of nature. The king at this time was King Charles I. You may know him from his little goatee beard, his extensive art collection, and for starting the Civil War in 1642. He was executed for that in 1649. Charlie got the chop. So Old Tom arrived at the palace and was introduced to the king. The king said, "Master Parr, you have lived longer than other men. What have you done more than other men?" Old Tom replied, "Well, your majesty, I was unfaithful to my first wife 50 years ago, and I've been doing a penance ever since." So the king thought about this. He was unfaithful to his first wife when he was 102. That's pretty impressive. So the king said to Tom, Fie, old man, can you remember nothing but your vices? I think you should consider your penance done. Why don't you stick around? Let your hair down. Live a little." So Old Tom became a celebrity. He got invited to all the best parties because everybody wanted to meet this 152-year-old man. And he started eating some lovely rich food and drinking some lovely fine wine. Within 3 weeks, Old Tom keeled over, stone dead. And so the king ordered Old Tom to be buried in Westminster Abbey. Did he feel guilty about his death? After all, Old Tom was quite happy in his little cottage, eating old bread and cheese. It was the change in diet and living the high life in London that killed him. So Old Tom was laid to rest amongst the great and the good of the country in the kingdom's finest church. And so we come to the elephant in the room. Old Tom Parr had said, "I'm 152 years old." So how old was he really? "I'm 152, I just told you." The eminent physician of the time, Dr. William Harvey, I think he was a bit suspicious of his age, he said he wanted to do a post-mortem. And when he opened Old Tom Parr up, he said that his internal organs were perfect for a man about 70. So let's say he was 70, maybe 80. This is still twice the average life expectancy for the time, which means that he's outlived all the people in the village by about 35, maybe 40 years, which is 3 generations or so. So the villagers that knew the old man in the hut, they thought that it was the same old man in the hut that their grandparents had told them about. And they were just confusing them. And Old Tom Parr just went along with it. Why wouldn't you? So I hope that clears up the riddle of Old Tom Parr.